Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So once again, thanks everybody for joining this call. I think this is the first time that we've done an adult-centric squash information session. I think it's long overdue for us to speak to you, the adult community, the largest community we have of squash players. And I'm really happy tonight to welcome our new chairs of our Women's Committee, Doubles Committee and Masters Committee. To introduce to the call, I'm going to ask Kevin Kupstein, our President and CEO, to say a few words. So Kevin, if you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself in the call, that'd be great.
Sure. Hopefully people can see and hear me. My computer crashed about 20 minutes ago, so I'm on my phone. It's nice to have a group gathered at all to discuss adult squash and supporting it. I wanted to just give folks a bit of context in terms of how we got to where we are here, and then just I know there's a lot of material that the three chairs of the doubles, the women's and the masters committees want to get through. But if you look back 10 or 12 years ago, there's three areas where we focused on, which are our teams, our technology, and the Specter Center. And it's been some heavy lifting on all those fronts. The teams, we didn't really have much of a developmental pipeline. We didn't send kids to the British Junior Open. We only sent the junior teams, not individuals, to the World Championships, and now we send them both genders, and we have a full stable, of high performance players. So previously, a decade ago, pros were on their own; they were training and playing, and then we'd gather them once a year to play for our team for the World Championships. And now we've got a dozen full-time pros playing out of the Specter Center with a full-time coach and physio. So a lot's developed there on the teams front, and that's a big part of what we do. On the technology, 10 years ago, people entered tournaments all over the place. We licensed our technology. Tournaments were run manually. Now we own Club Locker. A lot of the steps in the process, from leagues to entries to tournaments to scoring, is automated. There's all sorts of on-site display and live streaming capabilities, and we own that technology. And then the last thing, of course, is the Specter Center. We used to host our major events and national championships sort of all over the place, up and down the East Coast, and sometimes on the West Coast, and didn't really have a home for the sport, and now we do. So, with those three areas essentially stabilized or out of the way or under the waterline, we have time now to focus on actually growing and developing the sport. The juniors are obviously the key to our growth, and with their parents and coaches are sort of the squeaky wheel that's gotten the grease. And I think Kim will show some charts that show sort of the pretty heavy, intense activity of junior squash and how it tapers into adults and kind of spreads out in a long tail. And we're excited to sort of dig into this. Most of the staff are masters and adult and doubles players, and so we're passionate about it. And we're looking forward to working with the committees to make it happen. Another thing in terms of our growth is, what we haven't done particularly effectively is work with the community and work through our committees. And so we're looking to do that more effectively, because there's so many capable people out in the squash community who want to help develop the sport, and we want to help organize and support them in doing so. So that's a lot of what this is about in terms of kicking it off. So, I did want to thank Kim and her team for pulling this together, supporting the doubles committee with Steve Scharf, and the Masters Committee with John Musto and previously Richard Millman, and Karen on the Women's Committee. And so I'll hand it back off to you, Kim, and just want to appreciate everyone who's called in, and particularly the chairs of those three committees. Finally, I think having this core group also engaged with our district committee, which is quite active, is a good point of leverage, and also our Teaching Pro Advisory Committee. So the more we can get these committees on the same page and working together, I think the more traction we'll get in promoting adult squash. So thanks, Kim.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I think what you said there about bringing everyone together, as I was talking to John about masters and talking to Karen separately about women and Steve separately about doubles, and then you think about the community they serve and it's the same people, it just made sense. It's like an epiphany moment for me. So we must work together because we're doing the same thing. If we're all doing that, we'll be successful together rather than doing it all individually. So for the structure of this evening, I just wanted to quickly just show you what that committee structure looks like, but then quickly go on to allow Steve to talk about doubles, and then John about masters, and Karen about women's squash. As I said in the chat here, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will address the questions. But first of all, we want to go through the presentation, and we'll hold the questions until the end. Also, once we get to questions, feel free to put your hand up in a little you're able to do that somewhere on Zoom. So without further ado, I just wanted to show you how all our committees, and as a national governing body and as part of the USOPC, we do have to have our standing committees. They help us govern and administer the organization. Standing committees comprise of board members and athletes and staff liaisons. But the important committees here, and it's important to you guys who are our constituents, our constituent committees, women, doubles, and masters we're talking about tonight. But as Kevin said, we have our district committee, which is really active, where our district leaders come together and talk about best practices within a district. We also have a national championships committee, which talks about the quality of the national championships and the criteria that we should be looking at to make sure a national championship is actually still viable. We have a hardball singles as well as our other type of variety of squash. We have advisory committees. I think some of you on this call are on the TPAC, our Teaching Pro Committee. We also have sportsmanship and character, which is new this year. Conduct and behavior is very important to us. We believe in winning and playing with integrity. Medical advisory was very important during COVID, and now it's kind of pivoted to what it should be, which is about injury prevention. How can we help to make sure that our kids and our seniors play squash for as long as they can without getting injured? National Team Committee is about selection criteria relating to our Team USA, both junior and seniors. Then we have our Hall of Fame and Awards Committee, which looks at how do we celebrate those people who've given so much to the sport. But tonight, obviously, concentrating on these three. But I didn't know if you knew all of this stuff and how we're organized. I thought it was interesting for you to see that each of these committees have a US squash staff liaison. Joining us tonight as a staff liaison, we have Narelle, who helps with the women's committee. Preston, I think everybody knows, very involved in double squash, and I'm helping John with master squash at the moment. So without further ado, that's enough from us and from US Squash. We would like you to hear from our committee chairs. So I'm going to hand over to Steve, who took over the realm of the doubles committee last year, the beginning of the season. Done a great job with reshaping that, but I'll let him tell you what's going on in doubles world. Over to you, Steve.
Great, thanks, Kim. Very happy to be here tonight, and thank you for allowing myself and Karen and John to share a little bit about what our committees are doing on the national scene. So yeah, just to give a quick introduction of myself, I'm the squash pro at the Round Hill Club, and have been here kind of seemingly forever. It's been about 27 and a half years. And I've on a double side of things, I've been, ever since graduating from Penn back in '95, I've been playing a combination of amateur events and nationals, pro events, Can-Ams, Lapham Grants, anything I could do on a double score was highly enjoyable to me. And I certainly spent a fair bit of my time hopefully teaching that to those skills to other people now. Let's go off me and move to the next slide though, Kim. So each myself, John, and Karen are going to take maybe it could be somewhere between 8 and 15 minutes to give you the gist of what we're doing. So for myself, I'm going to recap the 2022-2023 season, go over what our goals are for the next season and what we're going to plan on doing to accomplish those goals, and then introduce the 23-24 calendar. And then hopefully we'll be able to get some thoughts and feedback from you guys. So you can, as Kim mentioned, I took over the committee in the last fall. So it was kind of, we didn't get a lot of time to kind of hit the ground running. But the first thing we did was take a committee of 20, which has been a little stagnant kind of since the pandemic, and as all squash was for 2 full years there. And we looked at the people that were on it. We streamlined it down to 15 and try to make it help cover the majority of the regions in the US. And so be sure that you have 15 of the most passionate doubles players in the country who are leading the charge here and doing everything we can to make the game grow and improve the situation for everybody within the doubles world. And I think the next slide will show this, but our generally speaking, our one major goal this year was simply to hit the ground running and to increase general participation in all of our, especially our national events this year. And so on a base level, we did do that. Kim, you want to hit that next slide?
Sure.
So actually on paper, we did pretty well. Now we're also coming off that pandemic year. So a lot of we were up in everything. Our 5 major national events that we're focused on. The Century double was up a ton at 68%. US squash doubles was up 32%. The junior doubles was up about 20%. Parent child, same thing. And mixed doubles was a little more stagnant, but still up 12%. The issue was still a lack of participation amongst the women, age group women in particular. And as you can see at the bottom of this slide, we had no age groups, women's age groups in the 40s, 45s, 50s, or 55s at nationals, which is an absolute shame. And so we're certainly looking to do something about that. Same deal with the mixed nationals, and then even in the parent-child, which is a fun event if you ever get a chance to play that. But it was all either father-son or father-daughter teams this year. So that is now one of our major goals, and it was to an extent this year, and still didn't have much of an effect on it. So Kim, if you want to hand it over to the next slide there. Our main goals for the next season are increasing the overall participation at the national level, which I still think there's a lot of growth to be had. We're looking to make it easier for women to participate everywhere from certainly that 40 to 59 age group that we're really lacking in, but also in the 20s and 30s in particular, really across the board. We're looking to expose more juniors to the game of doubles, and we won't, I think in the next slide we started to go about, I mentioned how we're going to do some of this stuff. I don't think I mentioned a whole lot of the juniors, this being an adult call. And then finally, we're looking to standardize the rules and the refereeing by working with Canada to do that. Why don't we head over to the next slide, Kim? And so some of the strategies for accomplishing these goals, as I mentioned, the number one overall thing is simply increasing participation on the national level. And it's, there's a few things we want to do that are, I think, probably equally important. One is just to better the communication on a whole for all the different ways we can utilize that. So whether it be snail mail, obviously email, social media posts, and then really what we did this year was try to break up our national committee into group, and have each of our 15 members contact 15 friends and encourage them to play. And it did have a great effect, but and then also to have a structure to when these emails go out and when we're actually, we want basically everyone to feel invited to play each of these events. We've talked a lot about a rotation of national venues. So much stuff is in Philly right now that we want to make sure people have expressed that they want to mix things up and be in different parts of the country, particularly the hot spots for doubles, which is, so the next few years we have, it is in the suburbs of Philly this coming year, followed by Baltimore after that, and probably up in Wright, Greenwich after that. So kind of picking the hot spots of doubles to have the next 3, and then we'll move on to a smaller subsection. I won't mention anything, but we've got ideas of where to put it 4 years from now. One of the biggest things I think is that we're promoting, so we've had skill level divisions for the nationals, but they were not promoted. They weren't actually national championships. So that's going to be changed this year. And I think it may be the most important of these 5 or 6 ways we're trying to increase participation, mainly because to add a championship for A's, B's, C's, and D's, now all of a sudden that 45-year-old player, instead of coming down, from the Greenwich area and traveling down to Philadelphia or Baltimore and getting stuck playing a professional level player who's very much can enter any of these age divisions, which can be appealing to some and not so appealing to others. Now they can come down, they can still play that event in the age groups, but then they can also play in the skill level divisions, which should be hopefully one of those 2 options is going to be appealing to everybody. And from a club pro perspective, that means that I can now invite my entire membership down to play these events versus feeling like I was looking at just the highest level age group players. One of the things we also do, and we haven't really promoted it enough, is to make people aware that they can sign up individually for the nationals. And so we will do our best, myself, and especially Preston is excellent at this, pairing people up as they once they've signed up and forming teams without having to find your own partner. And then finally, one of the things that the adults doubles players have really expressed is that they want to have a certain community at each of these national events, which is a whole lot of food and beverage and camaraderie and everything else beyond the squash itself, which unfortunately means that it gets costly. And we certainly don't want to raise entry fees beyond what they currently are. So we've really made sure that we can find a strong local committee who can raise some sponsorship funds and thus give the community the experience that they want. As we spoke about earlier, the women, and it's something where we want everybody to weigh their 2 cents in and how we can re-engage the women female doubles players. And as Karen will talk about, like the females overall, but we talked about adding childcare options at the nationals and the mixed nationals. We certainly figured out this past year that we were overlapping with some school vacations, which took a lot of people out. And then again, offering skill level competition. So if that, again, for that, not just the age groups but for the 29-year-old who's not really ready for the open divisions, instead of having to wait 11 years to get to the 40s, they now should feel like they're either appropriate, if not appropriate for the open, they're appropriate for the A's, B's, C's, or D's. And then finally, back to the rules, we're looking to work with Squash Canada to standardize the rules of doubles and then create exams, which hopefully will increase the quality of the refereeing as we go through these tournaments, and the amateurs are actually refereeing other amateurs, which is something that's not done on the double side of things very often. So hit that next slide for me, Kim. So, we have a slate for this coming year, and this is the 6 doubles, including the intercollegiate doubles that we threw in there. Spread out always in the second half of the season, as it has been for a while, but we have made a couple adjustments this year. The US Century is going to be 1 week after President's Day, which hopefully will alleviate anybody's concerns that they're having to play on a holiday. We moved the mixed doubles a bit earlier to February in hopes that that'll change something. It was the last weekend in April in the last 2 years, and it's been perhaps hurt our numbers. And then the big one is the US squash doubles was March 8th and 9th, and that was the first week of a lot of private school vacations in the suburban New York and suburban Boston area. So hopefully pushing it back to 1 week earlier, like it was a few years ago, will be a help there. And I think it was Kevin Jernigan just pointed out that obviously not January 19th to 11th, it's the 19th to 21st, I would assume. And so that pretty much, we're excited about this coming season. We're hoping everybody is going to get involved. Obviously, you can hit the next slide there, Kim. But we are certainly looking for feedback. Anybody who's willing to help or has an idea, I'd love to hear about it. And other than that, That's my spiel.
All right, well, thank you, Steve. I think there are some common themes as we go through, and John speaks and Karen speaks, but thanks for doing that. You've shown the way. We're going to move over to John and see what John has in plan, as in store for Master Squashes here.
Okay,
Go
great.
ahead, John.
Thanks, Kim. And thanks to everyone for logging on a Wednesday night. And I also want to really thank Steve, Karen, and Kim for bringing us, all together, collaborating on this. It's a lot of fun. I'm very happy to talk about Master Squash. I really, truly love Master Squash. It's taken me around the world and been the catalyst for countless friendships and dozens and dozens of cities I've played in. My goal is to bring some of that vibrancy that I have experienced to the US with a more structured season, what I think of as a not to miss national championships, and lots of opportunities for players to be able to represent Team USA. Kim, you can move on. The first thing I just want to say is that Master Squash is fundamentally different from skill level squash. It's two very different things. People play for very different reasons. It's a very different experience. Over the years in the US, we've tended to focus more on skill level squash. There's a pretty large gap after college before Masters kind of kicks in, and most tournaments and leagues are kind of skill level based. Kim, you can move on. What we want to do is kind of engage people in Master Squash. Master Squash creates a level playing field for people from the physical effects. Sometimes I think, somebody age 55 might be a 5-5 in round one, but by the time they get a few rounds in, they're not really a 5-5 player anymore. At least I'm not always. Every 5 years, you get to become the new person in the draw, which means that you kind of have like a phoenix, almost like you get this rebirth every 5 years. It's this wonderful thing of looking forward to getting older. There's tremendous camaraderie, opportunity for world travel, connect with the greater squash world, and you get to wear Team USA on your back. I've done it many times. But for those of us who are just in Poland, you kind of appreciate what it means to represent your country, and you can do that when you play Master Squash. Okay, let's move on. So, what do Master Squash players want? We've conducted surveys. I've done countless interviews with players, and it's very consistent message from Master Squash players what they want. The first thing is more tournaments. More Masters tournaments with age groups. Second thing is age group divisions in kind of what have traditionally been age group skill level tournaments, especially the kind of larger regional tournaments. Somebody who's 55 or 60 might not want to have to face a 25-year-old in the semis. They might want to be able to kind of have that level playing field with their competition. People want more participation at the national championships, which is hugely important. More social opportunities. It's a big part of being a Masters player is the social aspect, the friendships that you create over the years. Masters players want rankings that reflect their performance in Masters tournaments, and which is different from ratings. And everybody wants better communication, and to know what's coming up and when it's going to be, and to be told about these things. Okay, so we can go on. So let me just go over a couple of things that we're going to have for the upcoming season. We're going to have what I like to think of as a Grand Prix of Masters events. And we are working on this calendar right now, and we have a bunch of tournaments already confirmed, and we're working on a bunch of others. Some of them have been long-standing Masters tournaments that have been very successful. Some of them have been regional tournaments, as I mentioned. We'll have age group category, which will be part of that Grand Prix. And then some regions really don't have coverage for Masters tournaments. So we're going to be looking to add Masters tournaments to underserved regions. Our bare minimum goal, which I'm very confident will surpass, is to have 10 events kind of across the country from October through the end of March, leading right up into nationals. And along with that, a monthly communication with results and rankings and upcoming events. So everybody is on the same page and people are getting some recognition for how they've done in these tournaments. We can move on. This is just a little bit of a snapshot of where we are right now. You know, I will say it's a little New York centric at the moment, but that's not the final calendar. We're going to work to spread it across, and we are in touch with many regions of the country which are excited to be part of this. In fact, some people have been coming to us, which is the big hope, that people want to be part of this. They want to grow their Masters base, which kind of Kim alluded to is really the most loyal squash players you have. You know, Masters players who play for 40 years rather than for 6 years to get into college. Anyway, let's move on. I mentioned the Masters rankings, and we're going to pilot this coming year. There are a lot of complications and considerations when putting together a ranking system. And you know, I wasn't a math major, but we're going to put together with very smart people a ranking system that all tournaments in the Grand Prix will be equal. It's based on your final position in that tournament. You know, the lower age groups are worth more points. Your final ranking will be solely for your age bracket, like 35 to 39, 40 to 44, you know, and so forth. But you'll get credit for any Grand Prix Masters events you played, regardless of what division you played in. We're looking forward to this being something that helps give a little traction to the season, where there's a little bit of recognition and also results from how you've done. You can see it reflected in your ranking, where sometimes ratings, I'm a huge proponent of ratings, but sometimes ratings are not the same as rankings, especially for Master Squash, where exposures might be a little bit lower. And so we're very excited to kind of roll this out along with the calendar of events. Masters Nationals. I thought this year's Nationals were pretty good in a lot of ways. There were also a lot of shortcomings in a lot of ways. Some of the draws were 32. You know, my draw happened to be a full 32, which was a tough weekend. And some draws were minimal. And Karen's going to talk a little bit more about, on the women's side, how we invigorate the women's draws. But there are some basic things that are a bit overdue for helping to invigorate draws at nationals. Incentivizing district associations, and especially teaching pros. Teaching pros are often the gateway to Masters players, and incentivizing them to send their players to nationals. I'm a huge believer in early bird registrations. I think one of the things that often discourages or dissuades people from signing up is they go to look at the draw on Club Locker, and there's 3 people signed up, and they're like, well, you know, if some more people sign up, I'll join. Well, if everyone does that, then it stays at 3. But if we have our, you know, the people who know they're going to play and they're all in, signed up early, then when the people who are on the fence look, they have nice draws. It's a real tournament. And so I'm a huge believer in early bird registrations. For those who were at nationals this year, Timmy Brownell and Todd Harrity did a fantastic exhibition. which really gave a lot of excitement to the Saturday night, and followed by a great party. And that is going to be kind of our framework, and kind of keep building on that to create kind of a very, very fun Saturday night event. And since management's on the phone, I must say we do need sponsorship. Otherwise, my mic will be shut off. The other thing, which is just a very, I happen to play a lot of, I just played the Canadian a few weeks ago. Richard Chin and I are going, and Lior are going off to the British Open next week. To me, I love playing these tournaments, but I think it's a big opportunity to market to Canadians, market to other countries to come play our nationals. It's an open Masters event. There's great Mexican players, great English players, great Canadian players who can come play in our tournament. And I also just think, and this is one of the basic reasons people don't play nationals, is that they're not fit. Like, well, I got to play 4 matches in a weekend. I'm not fit for that. Well, if we have a series of Masters tournaments throughout the year, you kind of increase the pool of players who are kind of match tough. If you've played a couple of tournaments, nationals, hey, I'm ready to play. So that kind of eliminates that as a reason not to play. We can move on. There's the other thing I mentioned is the opportunity to play for Team USA. And again, I have a drawer full of Team USA jerseys, which I enjoy wearing. And I think anyone who's put it on at an international event feels a lot of pride and camaraderie with the other players who are also wearing the jersey. And so we're going to keep pushing that. I'm very happy that there's a new Pan Am Masters tournament, thanks to US Squash. And that's going to be in Philly the beginning of August. And that's kind of a nice lead up to the Pan Am Masters Games, which are going to be in Cleveland in 2024. So there's a great event this summer. There's a great event next summer. The World Masters is going to be in Amsterdam in 2024. And my prediction is that it's going to be the biggest World Masters ever. Amsterdam's a wonderful place. It's super easy to get to from anywhere in the world. And for anyone on the call who's a Masters level, age player who has never played a World Masters, it is the greatest squash experience you'll ever have. So I'm going to be really pushing this throughout the year. I have been in contact with people in Canada about setting up a regular Masters team match with Canada. We're all very excited. We're hoping to do this next spring. And I'm going to continue to reach out to players, and we're going to continue to reach out to not just publicize our own Grand Prix of tournament, our own nationals, but Canadian nationals, British Masters. There's a European circuit of tournaments which are open to American players. I've played a number of them, and they're fantastic tournaments. And there's something about going to a great city like Vienna or Prague and playing great players you've never knew before. And it kind of creates a great Masters experience. So I'm going to keep pushing that. So we can move on. How can you help? The first thing is, I want to say I appreciate the people for joining this call on a Wednesday night as summer is upon us. But the first most important thing is to help spread the word. There's a lot of people who play at clubs and never really think about playing tournaments. I like to think of Masters players who do play these tournaments as being ambassadors for Masters Squash, and reaching out to the people at their club and bringing them in, letting them know how great it is to play in a Masters level tournament where you're not, having to keep up with a 25-year-old, and the social aspect that comes along with that, and all the opportunities for world travel. So the first thing is spread the word. Next thing is play the tournaments. We can talk and talk and talk, but at the end of the day, enter the tournament. Don't be the person who waits on the sideline and waits for everyone else to enter. Put your name in there and encourage other people to play. Next thing is play a Team USA event. Play the Pan Am Games. Wear your jersey. Come to the World Masters. be part of our matches against Canada and represent your country. The next thing, which is very, very important, is if you're capable, be a patron or a sponsor. Steve was mentioning the cost of creating an environment which is conducive to camaraderie. Well, that includes, drink and food, and someone has to pay for all this. And so the patrons and sponsors are very appreciated in a vital part of making Master Squash work. And the last thing, I'll just put out a call. If somebody wants to be part of the Masters Committee, please contact me. I'm looking for people who love Master Squash and want to help grow it and be ambassadors and to be part of the committee and part of the process of helping this grow. So that's Master Squash.
All right, thanks, John. John, I think everyone probably knows how creative John is. He has so many ideas, and it's just a matter of just what is it that we can achieve. But I'm sure there's a lot is going to come out of some of the stuff that John has in his head right now. So looking forward to working with you, John, this year.
Same here.
So Karen, over to Karen Rango. She is the new chair of the Women's Committee. Obviously, women's participation was not great this year, and so despite really trying and reaching out, so I think we're interested to hear what Karen has to say about how we're going to try to address that this year.
Yep. Hi, everyone. John, I just have to say I'm sold. I'll be in Amsterdam with you. And I'm going to bring all the women from the US with me. I am returning to help chair the Women's Committee and promote women's squash. I did it way back in the late 80s and then took a little bit of a hiatus. And I'm really excited to be here. I do have to just give a shout out to Jen Gabler and AJ Copeland, who I think ran the Women's Committee. Well, Kim said for at least 8 years, as long as Kim has been working for US Squash, and perhaps even longer. So they did a great job of promoting women's squash, bringing all the women to How Cup, creating a women's fund to help ignite women's squash in areas that didn't have that many women. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about kind of a similar format, what happened last season or this past season, give an insight into what we're going to do, talk about next season, and hopefully get your thoughts and feedback. So this past season, we'll go to the next slide. I'll give you a chance to just kind of look at the numbers. And what this is telling you is all of the national events that women had an opportunity to play in and how many individual women played. And what's striking to me is the top line is the skill levels. Now this is post-COVID, so this was October 2022. The 3 players there were 2 juniors and a college player. So I kind of consider that 0. And then when you go down to US Master Squash, 11 players, that was 3 divisions, but everybody in the women's 65s also played in the women's 60s. And when I look at the numbers of women playing national squash tournaments, say before COVID, way before COVID, these individual tournaments had at least 25 people playing in them. And those numbers aren't great, but they're better than these numbers. What I read from this is 230 women are playing at How Cup. That was like over 40 teams. And women like to play as a team, be part of a team, and have social events. And you can see it also in the doubles numbers, which are kind of flat to increasing slightly. So there's goodness. I know that there's women out there that are willing to travel and that are playing singles. The question is, how do we gather them and get them to play individual nationals at either skill levels or masters? And I'll talk about that. Let's go to the next slide. So US Squash, so I just took over the women's committee. But what Kim and Narelle have been doing is asking themselves and interviewing lots of people about what is it that why do they play squash? Women, why do they play squash? Why did they play squash and are not anymore? And why are they playing squash again? So basically, trying to understand the woman's relationship to squash through the journey of her life. So she, plays maybe in college, plays as a junior, plays maybe in college. What happens after college? Maybe is heavy in her career and starts a family. What happens then? Now she's got teenage kids and or is later in her career and has maybe some more free time, becomes an empty nester, has lots more free time, et cetera. And what are the needs of all the women at the different phases of their lives? And Kim, you can correct me if I misstate, but I think what we've realized is we are not hitting the mark for what women need at the different ages or phases of their lives. And so what we're going to do this year is work through these phases and understand what women want at each of the phases. So we're in the beginning journey of documenting the journey of women's squash. Once we can figure out what women want or what they need or how they want to interact with squash at the different phases of their life, we can figure out what programming works best for them. Is it a tournament? Is it a social weekend? And we're working through that. I think in the chart, you will see that the lines represent number of engaged players, with the horizontal being the age and the vertical being the number of players. And the women are in orange and the women are in blue and the men are in orange. And what you can see is a drop off. So like 18 years old has the highest. And as girls then play in college and keep going and aging out of college, the drop off of players is significant. And what's interesting about this chart is it shows the same thing is happening in the men's community, just not as significantly. Kim, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think we literally just did this chart where we overlaid the men and the women, but clearly as Karen says, there's massive attrition with women from college to adult, and we see a little bit of it coming back, but we don't see much. And so when we're looking at how many people are playing in nationals, well, is it surprising that there aren't that many when honestly there aren't that many women? This horizontal line here is 50, so there's maybe 10 women who are age 45 who are playing these kind of championships in the country. So why would we expect to get 20 in a division if only 10 are actually known to us? So what we really need to try and do here is to make this drop off not be so severe. And if we were more up here, we would get more success. Now you can see with the men, they do drop off, not as much, but they bounce back a lot quicker than the women do. So I think that when women get, speaking for myself, and I don't know other mothers on the call, but I know when I had my children, I felt very guilty about doing anything for myself. And I would stay at home with my kid rather than going out to do something for me. And if I did, I was like, to my husband, like, are you sure you can look after the child? You're not going to, you're not going to drown it in the bath. You're not going to, smother it. So I think a lot of us will always prioritize the child over themselves more so than the men. And that's a massive generalization. So I'm sorry if there are other, fathers out there who do all this stuff too. But But anyway, I think you can. It's interesting to see that, and what Karen says is looking at each stage of that journey and trying to provide what women want. at those stages may help us to retain women and perhaps engage more women in the sport.
Yeah.
I'll just move on.
All
I'm
right.
sure we'll come
Yeah.
back to that. What can we do? I'll take the first few bullet points here, and then Karen will talk about how the committee can help. Because Karen kept saying to me, how can we help? How can we help? What can we do? And I'm like, just hold on while we just step back and figure out what it is that we want to do and how it can help and what the context is and what's going to have the most impact. But I can tell you what we are working on right now is creating best practice programming so that we can go to our Teaching Pro community and our clubs and say, if you are interested in women's programming and to growing a women's program, we think that these types of program can help for these age groups, or this type of coach can help, or this type of approach can help. And we will work with some of those programs to pilot some of these ideas and see if they're effective. Today, I think, or yesterday, our first Women and Girls teaching module went live, and we're going to ask our Teaching Pro community to take that continuing education module. And it's really there to try to help them, whether you're a man or a woman coach, to know how to communicate with women and girls and keep them engaged in the sport. I think the way you speak to women or the way they want programming to be done, the way to keep them together can be different from boys and men. And giving our Teaching Pros some more tools to help make that happen, I think should have an impact on retaining our girls in sport. And, you need to see it to be it. And when you look at the number of coaches that we have who are female, we have I think we have less than 10% of our coaches are female. And we have those numbers now. We need to increase that. Our women and our girls need to see their role models. And if they haven't got the role models, it's hard for them to see themselves in that role. So we are definitely working on those top three. And we definitely need the help of the committee to help us as well. So Karen, we want to speak to how we're going to help.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Kim. So, and it's interesting that, women, if you don't have the role models with the female coaches, and one of the things Kim and I talked about earlier was having women players play, junior girls to see role models just as women playing squash. And so that's something that I like to do with the junior girls at our club. But for the committee, it seems like this drop off from college players into the working world is so easily fixable. And I've talked to a number of people about this that have been on the committee or people that are kind of in the community about, one, reaching out to all the college coaches and asking, where are your seniors moving to? They all know. And then two, having ambassadors or regional reps or women in the areas around the country, that play Hal Cup, et cetera, that would be like your regional committees, be ambassadors and have them connect these just graduated seniors, connect them to clubs in the community, to people in the community, and bring them in. I think John said it and Steve said it. One of the things that the three of us, when we talk, we find is that community is one of the most important things why we're playing squash. I mean, it's to test our skills, but community is huge. And if we can help bridge that gap, we think that we'll see an increase in numbers of just that age group of 22 to 30 out playing. And then if we can offer them, hey, we've got a team for you and come play Hal Cup, it will be even better. So let's go to the next slide and we can talk about what we're planning on. All right, so the biggest change that we are making for national tournaments where women can play is we are taking the skill levels and we're combining them with the age groups, and we're making it a women's only tournament. And it's going to be in April. And this year it'll be in Philadelphia. You'll see a lot of tournaments for the women are in Philadelphia. They are going to start to distribute throughout the country. But next year, will be predominantly in Philadelphia. So what does this look like? The skill levels, A, B, C, or the skill levels 3, 3, 5, 4, 4, 5, etc. And the age groups starting at the 40s on up. And women would be allowed to play in 2 events. So if you wanted to play in your age group, but you are not similar to what Steve was saying with the doubles, you're not able to compete with the top players, you can also play in your skill level. So you've got competitive matches, but you're also playing in your age group. And making it a woman-only event, we feel like it will bring these women together. And more people will play. It's not going to be a team event like Hell Cup will be, but we have these thoughts of having like a city cup. So if we use the World Masters as an example, we represent Team USA, and we're all rooting for each other, and we're all wearing the same clothes, etc. Well, if you can imagine that you went to the Women's Squash Championships and you were representing New York, or you were representing Connecticut, or city in Connecticut, or Boston, or Seattle, and you were cheering each other on. You had perhaps a women's teaching pro event, and now the teaching pro is bringing all of her women players to the event, and you would rack up points and you could get a city cup or something like that. So it's got a bit of a team element to it, but you're playing an individual tournament. So we're going to try that, and we'll see how it works. We'll get your feedback, and then the following year we'll either improve on it or do something else. And I think that's it for next year's tournaments. And do we have another slide? Okay, well, just like everybody else, I look forward to your feedback and questions. And as we document the journeys and try and figure out what squash means to them, how they want to engage in it, we're going to do that through your personal stories. So we want to talk to all of you. All right, thank you very much. Back to you, Kim.
Oh, I think it's not back to me, but I'm going to pass it over to everybody else on the call. Thanks very much to John, Steve, and Karen for presenting their ideas and strategies for this coming season. We definitely know that we don't have all the answers, and so we absolutely want your help. If you are really keen to engage in how we're developing whatever aspect of the sport that you enjoy playing, please reach out to one of those 3, and I know they'll welcome you with open arms and your ideas too. So we do have some questions that have come in. I answered a couple, but there are some others on here. Hold on, Kevin again. So actually, I want to throw this over to the people on this call. Communication was mentioned, I think, by everybody. Both Steve, John, and Karen is like, we need to be better at communicating with you. How do we communicate with you? How do you receive information? Meaning, if we send you an email, are you going to see it? Do you see it on social media? What is the best way for us to get to you, to let you know what's going on? It's extremely frustrating when we hear from people saying, oh, we didn't know about Masters, or we didn't know about Nationals, we didn't know about doubles. So give us your ideas, put them out there on the chat, or if you want to ask a question as well, please put your hand up and or unmute yourself and ask a question. No one's going to say. So, John, I have a question for you. John Musto. Somebody asked about using different balls for different age groups. What's your thoughts on that? Should we be using a bouncier ball for people as they get older, do you think? Or do you think people really want to stay with that double yellow dot?
I think that is a great question. And my personal opinion is that I think a bouncier ball is better for higher age groups. I think one of the things that makes squash difficult is when people are using the wrong ball. As you know, I'm a teaching pro, and I always have certain people. I see. There you go. Certain people using a bouncier ball in different situations. That being said, there are some very proud players in upper divisions who want to use the ball that's going to be used at, like, say, World Masters Championships and the like. And they're very good players, and they don't want to play with not the kind of official ball. What I would like to test out this coming year is for in certain age groups, let's say 70, 75, and 80, especially for consolation play to be played with a 1 dot, main draw play be played with a 2 dot. Obviously, my 2 cents is not to just impose this, but put this out as a survey to players. But I'm a big believer that the 2 dot ball is not appropriate for all age groups.
Would anyone else like to chime in on that? We have Masters players here, also for different age groups. I'd be interested in anybody's opinion if they're willing to share it.
I'll chime in here from New York. I agree that I think you have, especially in the oldest ranges, you would have longer and more fun rallies with some more bounce, especially 75 plus, 80 plus. Me personally, who finds the physical aspect of playing squash very important, I would not want to play lower or on a bouncier ball, but that's just me.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, I think it's worth a survey to people to people in the upper age groups, especially. I just think a 2 dot ball is not the right ball for most upper age group play.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right, John. As we get older, we just can't hit as hard as you can. So, yep.
I'm getting ready for that 1 dot.
Okay, another question. Steve, there was I think you tried to address it in the chat, but access to doubles courts. Doubles is fun, but access can be tricky. What are your thoughts on that?
That sums it up right there. So unfortunately, there's at the moment a very limited number of doubles courts in the States and North America in general. And you know, basically all we can do, I mean, other than, you know, work with areas of the country and people who are potentially willing or even thinking about, you know, potentially putting one in to facilitate that any way we can, but it's certainly far and few between, and no matter what, it's going to be a limited number. So as I replied to it, I forget who it was who wrote that. I mean, I will certainly do my best to link people together with opportunities to play. Preston is a wizard at that kind of stuff, and does it on a national level, but certainly utilize myself and Preston and anyone on the committee. That's who I'm gonna be sending them towards Mary Belknap McKee, see what her suggestions are for the Boston area. But anybody who would like to put a doubles court in anywhere, please do so.
Softball doubles. Anybody have any opinions on softball doubles?
Next question.
That's interesting. Just trying to spark some debate, some lively debate. So good.
Hey, Kim.
Yes.
Kim, there's Hope asked a question about when is the tournament schedule going to be published? So we put, like, I didn't put dates in mine on my chart, but Steve put them on his. But to get the tournament schedule out there and published, do you have a time frame for that?
Yes, we will have that on the calendar by the end of next week. So some of the tournaments, some of the junior tournaments are already there. We finalized some details this week, and so we will have that in May. Maybe have some tomorrow, but we'll just probably open them all up next week.
Yeah.
So look out on the events listing for that. Also, there's a Masters filter on Club Locker. So if you're looking for any tournament that has an H division draw, just select Masters. If you're looking for doubles, just select doubles. We don't have one for women yet, but we might add that one, I think, just so that people can see what the opportunities are out there.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Kim, I have a question for John Musto. Which
ahead.
Is the Pan Am Masters at the Specter Center in August. Is that the Masters event, age groups by 5 years? Is it an individual thing? It's not a tryout for a Team USA. John, can you be specific about what it means to be a part of Team USA? Because that might mean different things to different people. And I've been asked that question about what does it mean at the Masters level to be part of Team USA?
Well, you have to pass a pretty difficult exam. No, that's not true. To be part of Team USA as a Masters player, you play tournaments such as the Pan American Masters or the Canadian or the British or the Worlds, and you are hereby part of Team USA. We are very inclusive, and we want everyone to be part of it. When in Poland, I think we had 25 members of Team USA, and every day, every single person who played had 10 to 15 teammates cheering them on and coaching them. And it was a wonderful experience. The same thing has been true in past World Masters. For anyone who's done it, it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of. So hope to be as clear as possible. The way to become part of Team USA is to enter an event like that, and you are hereby part of Team USA.
Nice. And that's the same for the Pan Am Masters Games as well. That's a new event next year in Cleveland, and that really is part of a multi-sport event, which is the difference. So Pan Am Masters is just squash. Pan Am Masters Games is part of a whole plethora of other sports full of Masters players. So more information on that as we get it. That should be.
It will. I think it will be very important to spell out for all adult squash players that playing the Pan Am Masters in Cleveland means passion qualifies you. Anybody can show up and play that, instead of thinking that you might have to qualify for that because, oh, then I have to play other events. We want people to play events, but I think communicating that you pay your entry fee and you're in, that's really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something that I have talked a lot about to people is I have never played a Masters tournament anywhere in the world where I had to qualify. As you say, if you can come up with the entry fee, you're in. And then if you're a US player, you're part of Team USA. And so it's a very open, and I think you're right that sometimes these names can seem daunting and seem like something, hoops you have to get through, and that's just not the case. And we're very welcoming and want everyone to wear the Team USA jersey.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask Narelle to talk to Chris Longman's question here about what our thoughts are for how to engage the lower level woman who maybe just picked up a racket as an adult. I know Narelle has some great experience with some players out in Columbus, Ohio, and I think speaking to those tournaments would be interesting for the group to hear. So Narelle, are you able to speak to that?
Yep. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Chris, for your question. This season, we actually had some really good success with women's participation, especially after Hal Cup. We had 3 teams come out from Ohio and a team back from Portland, Oregon that hadn't been playing for many years. So one of the things that they did was go back to their local communities and create mini Hal Cup events. So they went to Cincinnati first, and it was just purely a round robin experience, whereas 5 ladies on a team. essentially it didn't end up exactly the way that How Cup was, but the teaching pros worked around how many people were signed up per team, made sure it was level appropriate. It was really inexpensive. It covered the court fees, covered a dinner, and really not much else beyond that, because they were trying to get people to connect together from different cities. I know, Chris, you hosted an event for the Philly community for the ladies, and it was a huge success. It was a one-day event, and then you provided lunch for the ladies. I know women from the Specter Center came back raving, asking how we could do more events like this. It will be a focus of the Women's Committee to create more of these events around the country. We're putting out a survey to all the teaching pros in the country to ask them to offer to pilot women's programs and offer to host events like that, that other club pros in their area can come together to help engage more women to participate, whether it's singles and doubles, team. So it can be 5 people on a team. You can have 4 people playing singles, 3 doubles matches. There's various ways we can create events for you, that you can reach out to me if you want to host an event. For Ohio, I've done all their entries on Club Locker, match by match. So the women had ratings to make sure that when they do come to How Cup, they're rating appropriate, so they don't get blown out and it's worth their time to participate, or they're not too strong that they blow out the other people and then they don't want to come back. What we're going to try to do in September for Women's Squash Week is host an event in California. We understand there's a huge need for California to get re-engaged and have something to look forward to. We're also looking at having an event in Florida in January and February, so it's a destination weekend. Obviously, that's more expensive, but if teaching pro, but it's destination. So I think from the women, we figured out that if they can play squash and get a bit of a vacation, they're willing to take the time to participate. But if any of the pros around the country want to host one-day or half-day events, we can help create that on Club Locker and put it up on the website, so that anyone from around the country knows that there's an opportunity for them to participate in as well, and can keep the cost minimal. But we do need pros like you, Chris, that are willing to do it. Thankfully, you have a woman that's a teaching pro, is your lovely wife, but she spends so much time engaging the women. And again, as we've said, we really need more women to participate and help be ambassadors, knowing that there is a huge lack of female coaches. So the biggest thing is getting more ambassadors in our committee that are willing to help host it as well.
Well, thanks, Sarah. That was great. I'm conscious of time. Everybody, it's 9:10, so we've run 10 minutes over. I'm sorry about that. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think we'll wrap up here. I think you have everybody's email address. This has been recorded. We'll make sure this gets sent around to you. We really thank you for the input. Keep the ideas coming, and hopefully you can continue to support whatever area squash that interests you most, whether it's doubles, masters, women's, or all of them. But thank you very much for your support.
Thanks, everybody.